Alright guys, so watch this video for Tuesday, December 18th. I had a red day today, and I know why. It never fails. Whenever I spend the weekend or an evening or whatever tweeting out my equity curve for the year, getting all braggy, and it really wasn't my intention to be braggy. It was more like just to prove that I practice what I preach, what we teach in our course. But and I've said this before. I feel like every time I tweet out that equity curve, it bites me the next day. Having said that, my only real loss today was in FedEx, which is something that I like the small caps, and so I get into trading something like FDX without realizing it can move 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 cents in a blink. I'm not used to that. I trade the small caps, so that one put me a red on the day. Before that, I wasn't up by very much anyway. So, and I didn't do much the rest of the day because let's go back to the SPY. SPY was pretty ugly when it was set to open down near these recent lows. I've got a couple lines here, the range that the SPY's been in. When it was set to open down here, I tweeted before the market opened, Monday reminder: oversold can become oversolder. I know that's not a real word, but it's funny to me. So I also tweeted something like, if you're looking for my hands, you won't see them because I'm sitting on them at the open. I really wasn't looking to get involved at the open because for me, for one, the market bounced from the bottom of its range like a week ago, bounced up, but didn't even really get 50, didn't retrace 50% of the range and started to roll over again. So still, it had fallen 3 days in a row to get down to the bottom of the range, which is also known as support. So it was set to open down here. So there's two ways to look at it. Hey, we're opening at support. They might just buy this right up. Or it might tank. I said in chat before the market opened, the most likely scenario is to look like it's going to go one way and throw off the shorts and then throw off the longs when they pile in. And if you look at it on 5-minute candles, look what happens. So you could argue people are shorting after it breaks the bottom of this range. I wasn't comfortable doing that because I just didn't believe after 3 or 4 days down that it's going to lose that 260 area and just keep tanking. So what happens? Bounces up, takes out the highs for the day, and we're starting to feel like, okay, this is, we're going to have a bottoming tail, we're going to be back up into the range, and then it rolled over, and just all day, just relentless selling, but kind of slow and methodical. Did get a little bouncer at the end of the day. So I never felt comfortable really shorting. I never felt comfortable going long. It is kind of interesting that back here, when was this? April? Beginning of April, that we bounced off this 255 area, and we kind of have a little bit of a bottoming tail there too. So, I could easily, this line, by the way, is the open, where the SPY opened for the year. So I'm just going to take that and put it at the support from April, and also you could argue from February. Anyway, so that's my new line. It's not that hard. Come on. There you go. Let's remove that. It's not that hard to argue that, you just kind of have a new range now from here down to here. It could keep falling though. So anyway, I don't put a lot of weight on the overall market. Glancing at this, it's certainly oversold. If this was an individual stock and these were 5-minute candles, right, I would certainly, with this kind of sell-off and it bounced nicely back here, I would be looking for a bounce, and you could argue we sort of got one there near the closing bell. But anyway, so what am I watching for Tuesday? Let me zoom in on this. So I guess Bitcoin got a bounce today, and I think that's what got Riot going. Riot actually closed pretty strong, R-I-O-T. So, a decent volume. I don't love this. It's an ugly chart. Every time it gets a little bit of a move, it gets slapped down. But if Bitcoin follows through, Riot might give a decent setup. If you look at it on an intraday basis, had this nice pop. Looked like it was rolling over and then went out at its highs. So I do want to watch it tomorrow. I'm certainly not in love with it. UXIN, great relative strength today. Now look where it closed. It's really far away from the moving averages. So anytime I have big separation between where a stock closes and these moving averages like the 8 and the 20, I'm not really thinking, hey, it's a good time to get long. But when you look at how weak the market was and you look at this UXIN, it's like the strongest stock in the whole wide world. I mean, look at this thing, gaps down and then rips and really holds up pretty well. There was a lot of funny business on level 2 though, these massive sellers showing up on the tape. So I certainly don't love this, but it is one of the strongest stocks out there, so we certainly want to watch it. NBEV closing, right at the highs from a few days ago. So very, very strong action in this one. I made a call on this one right over here. We had kind of an intraday. There was the early high. These are 5-minute candles. Then it put in a lower high. Then it kind of came up and tested this and was going sideways. Big seller on the tape at 660. I called this over. I said 661, 653 idea, something like that. It broke. We were looking for the next catalyst to fall, which would have been a high of day break. That happened, and it moved up, I don't know, from 61 to 75 before rolling over. But it closed pretty strong. So there was a decent little late day trade there, and it's one of those that triggered and worked right away. And that's the kind of setups I look for. It's the kind of setups we teach in our course. Inflection point trades with catalysts above. You time your entry right, you take a whole host of other problems out of the equation as a day trader, right? If you can be green right away, and that's all about timing your entry right, you don't have to worry about being red in the stock right after you buy it. And then people start thinking about, well, now what do I do? Do I average down? And all those other problems that can happen. This is a weird chart, MYOS. It almost looks like this was an errant tick, but when you go to intraday, this did happen. You can see it's kind of gappy between 5-minute candles. So it's a thinner stock. Let's go to 15s. It's kind of a cleaner look. So it gapped up the other day, and you can kind of picture a trend line here and a strong close in a weak market. So this one I think is worth watching. TME. This is just that recent IPO, Tencent Music Entertainment Group, and it hasn't broken a previous day's high. Just nothing but red. I do think this is worth watching for a bounce one of these days. I had it on watch today, but it didn't give any kind of setup. Same with CORT. You had a really strong move here, then a gap up the next day, and now you're like 4 days lower, hitting the 200-day from above, right in that buy zone between the 8 and the 20-day moving average. So worth watching for a turn back up tomorrow. ADIL. This one, I don't love this, right? You had this big move back here, then you had a big secondary move here where shorts got their faces ripped off this day. Now we're a couple days lower into that, what we call the buy zone between the 8 and the 20. That doesn't mean we automatically buy it there, but generally when a stock turns in this area, or when a stock pulls back to this area, much lower volume than these big pops, that's an area where I want to start looking for a bounce. So this one will certainly be on watch tomorrow for a low risk intraday setup. ASTC gapped up the other day, then a couple green days, but really could never get going. All the way down to 166,000 shares today after well over 10 million 4 sessions ago. So I feel like nobody's watching this, but I had it on watch today. I'm going to have it on watch again tomorrow. Certainly not in love with it. Cron, I did not get that afternoon breakout I've been talking about in all these videos. Again, Cron ran this morning and then rolled over again. So I want an afternoon high of day break out of a range before I'll take Cron. So it's just, again, it's one of those that's taking space on one of my charts, but I've got 6 monitors, so I can afford that, right? I can afford to give one chart to Cron. And I'd like to see it maybe come down near the 20-day, but either way, certainly worth watching. No trigger in it for several days. This one, I was on the fence about having it on watch. This is TLRY. This is the one that went up to $300. That's not an errant tick either. That actually happened back in September, right? Then it put in a lower high, then another lower high, then another lower high, and now it's just kind of full-blown rolling over. I look to the left and I don't say, oh, there's great support here. But what I do say is this has fallen from, let me go back about 5 or 6 days, $104. Now it's down to 65 something, right? So, and it's been getting kind of intraday sell-offs. So if this gives me a low-risk setup, maybe at something I deem might be relevant support. And sometimes support can be as simple as a whole number divisible by 10, right? Like a flush through 60 or a flush through 50 or something like that. Sometimes you can get nice trades just around that. But chart-wise, I don't see any support on this thing. I just think it's oversold in the short term. I'm going to have it on the chart. And then SHOP, S-H-O-P. It's the last one. Potential bounce play. Big volume the last couple days. Just 3 sessions ago, it was 164, and now it's below 129, and it's done a nice job. When it gets below 125, really nice bounce back here, here, and here. So if we can flush down below 125 in this area, I will be looking for an intraday turn and hopefully a trade. Remember, I don't hold overnight, so these are just possible trades I might take tomorrow if I get a low-risk setup, and I'm done babbling. We'll see y'all in chat tomorrow.